And with that, just having that mindset, it makes you feel some kind of way, you know. And it's like, well, you weren't here. You'll see it in movies and on reality TV shows, or even in real life in our communities. You will see where people have the father wound. I talk to a lot of inmates in juvenile detention centers, teen fathers. I ran a teen dad program for a long time, 13 to 19-year-olds, and I always ask them, who all grew up with their fathers? Few hands would go up, and then I would ask them, how do you feel about that? Because they're teen fathers, and I'm trying to get them to not do the same thing to their children. So I asked them, how did you feel your father not being there? And man, it would just open up a floodgate. I almost had to have therapists in the room because of the wounds.
What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, as always, Antoine Johnson of the Releasing Pressure podcast. Excited to be back with a new edition for you guys in a new year. And without further ado, I'm not going to waste any time today. We got a special guest on from all the way from Atlanta, Mr. Carl Route Jr., and I will have you introduce yourself, sir. And we're going to talk about fatherhood today. We're going to talk about fatherhood, manhood, faith, right? Like that's what this is all about. So Carl, jump right in, introduce yourself, and let's hear a little bit about you and your roots.
Well, greetings, family. My name is Carl Route Jr., and I say that because I was named for a man that I saw very little of. But I am a program director with Reaching Our Brothers Everywhere, where our mission is to educate, equip, and empower men to impact an increase in breastfeeding rates and a decrease in infant mortality rates. And we do that by educating, equipping, and empowering men. I've been doing fatherhood work for about 30 years now as a responsible fatherhood practitioner, but I've been a father for over 40 years and married for just about 40 years. But
Congratulations. Wow.
Thank you. But fatherhood is something very, very important to me because, and the reason I came into the work in the first place, because as a little boy named Carl Route Jr., who didn't have access to Carl Route Sr., that left a gap, a gaping wound inside of me, because everybody wants their own dad.
Right.
And I had a stepfather. And my little sister used to always say to me when she got angry, I'm going to tell my daddy. And that did something to me. So I said, wow, if I ever get to have children, I'll make sure that I'm there for them so they won't feel the way that I feel. So now I'm teaching men how to be better men and fathers. And man, I love the work because what it did for me is it healed my father wound by helping others to eliminate that kind of a wound.
Talk a little bit more about that, right? So I've heard the term father wound. I use it frequently in spaces like this. But for the audience, let's talk about what a father wound is, and then like specifically what that meant for you, how that impacted you growing up.
For me, my father missing, not being there. And that wound, the gaping wound, is the size of my father. With him not being there, there were so many things that I felt like he could have, a lot of problems that I had, I felt like he could have solved. And with that, just having that mindset, it makes you feel some kind of way, you know? And it's like, well, you weren't here. You'll see it in movies and on reality TV shows, or even in real life in our communities. You will see where people have the father wound. I talk to a lot of inmates in juvenile detention centers, teen fathers. I ran a teen dad program for a long time, 13 to 19-year-olds. And I always ask them, who all grew up with their fathers? Few hands would go up. And then I would ask them, how do you feel about that? Because they're teen fathers, and I'm trying to get them to not do the same thing to their children. So I asked them, how did you feel your father not being there? And man, it would just open up a floodgate. I almost had to have therapists in the room because of the wounds. And then a lot of them come across as angry.
Yeah.
I don't need that. He ain't, it's too late. And, it's just a lot. That father wound is a very aggravating wound.
Yeah.
And, But that's something that I really seek to address with men, boy, man, and father. Because, again, it's a real situation. And it does it's a public health crisis right now.
It's an epidemic, yeah.
It really is.
Absolutely. Let's talk about. So I heard you mention you've been married for 40 years.
That's right.
You're a father of how many? I know your kids are older now; they're grown. But how many kids?
I have 7 adult children. My oldest is 50, and my youngest is 34. But I have 4 men and 3 women, and 15 grandchildren.
Wow.
So my
what a
clip is
blessing.
full. Totally blessed, man.
I bet.
Totally blessed.
You're busy around the holidays, right?
Oh, man, I'm busy all the time. Because
the time?
Yeah. Man,
Okay.
Because just the other day, Valentine's Day, one of my sons was like, Dad, can y'all keep rain while we go for Valentine's? I'm like, well, what about our Valentine? But it's always something, but it's all good. It's all good. I love it.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that for a minute. So, you are what folks in my community would call the OG in the fatherhood space, or just as another older black male, someone who we may us younger folks may look to for wisdom, direction, guidance, things of that nature. I want to talk a little bit about, though, you just mentioned that you and your family have 7 kids, right? And now they're older, and so now you guys are empty nester and all that, then you enjoy your grandbabies and so forth. But in our society today, right, like I just get, there's there's almost this stigma around families who have a lot of children. Right, so you think about years past, like what you just shared. I mean, you guys, family of 9, right, with you and your wife and so forth. And nowadays, it's like you say you got 3, 4, 5 kids or whatever the case may be, and people look at you like you're a unicorn. Like what are you doing? And it's almost like it's distasteful to have a big family. Can you talk a little bit about the economy or the difference you see in terms of the way society views families, specifically black families, who have a lot of children versus those who had a lot of children back, when you were raising your family?
Well, one thing that I do realize as a baby boomer, there were large families when I was coming up, because a lot of the people were sharecroppers. And they had the more children they had, the more help they had on the farm or wherever they were living. And coming from the South, I understand that. But for me, my mother, I grew up in a blended family. My mom was married a few times, and then she married a man who had 5 children, and we all merged together. That blended family now, that's a totally different show.
Sure.
My family is blended, okay? Because my wife was married before, and we came together and had 3 children, and I had a son already. So we have a blended family, and it's very complex. But because I grew up in a blended family, I was prepared. And I decided some things from learning from my stepfather that I wouldn't do, because he made a difference between his children and my mother's children. And I felt very awkward in that arrangement And I said to myself, if I ever, I'm telling you, as a little boy, I was doing this. If I ever have children, I'll never treat them differently.
Yeah.
And this was happening as a little boy, man. I missed my daddy so much, especially having his name and being a junior. I thought something special came with that, like King David II, and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
King Henry IV. I figured, hey, I'm Carl Route the second. You know, something special comes with that, and this man was gone, not even able to tell me how to pronounce my last name, which is Route, spelled like route. So every time somebody asks me how to pronounce my last name, I get upset because I'm pronouncing the last name of this man, and they're bringing more attention to my name, which is the name that I got from this man that I don't see.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, man, all of this is part of that dynamic, that father wound, but at the same time, it motivates me to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say? Because you're right, the blended family, like that can really be a thing. Some people do it really well, but it can, a lot of different variations and things come with that. What would you say was one of the keys that helped you to not have a bias toward or do the favoritism thing when it came to integrating your family with your wife, seeing as though that you had children that you brought into the marriage and so forth? What was like one of those things that really helped you guys in that season or phase of your lives?
Well, the thing that is really, really special for us is we just happen to be believers, and because of our faith, we went to marriage retreats every year
Okay.
for the first 10 years. And we got good teaching, good solid teaching, which really helped our relationship and also helped our parenting, because as we learned, we were better able to teach and guide and lead our children. So having that personal relationship with the God of your understanding, that's what really helped me, because at first I was really an irresponsible father. Very irresponsible.
Talk about it. So we talk about faith here. Talk about faith in God, specifically faith
Okay.
in our Savior Jesus Christ. So
Yeah.
we'll be open about that. What was it specifically about, like, your faith walk, that you would say contributed to you being able to overcome or work through things that people who may not have that perspective, like what was that thing about your faith that helped you?
I had to have a paradigm shift. And that's one thing that my faith offered me, an opportunity to be transformed, my mind to be transformed, because I grew up with a ghetto mentality. Okay,
Okay.
fidelity and all that, it wasn't even part of my vocabulary. Having
Okay.
lots of girlfriends and all of that was part of my norm. But when I came in touch with a standard, a godly standard, I was so impressed with that, because those standards were standards that I admire and the ones that I look for in my mate and my children.
Yeah.
Be on time. Your word is bond. Sowing and reaping. Giving it, you know what I'm saying? Giving instead of taking. All of these kinds of things I began to learn. And the fruit of the Spirit, patience, kindness, and all these kinds of things, I wasn't exposed to that coming up. I went to Sunday school in a religious kind of way, but not in an intentional way to have a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
So I went through the motions, but I still learned. But at the same time, it was nothing that I could teach my children about. When I met my wife, she was like, we need to go to this church that I used to go to when I was staying in Atlanta. and we were just moving here. So I went and I met God. And when I met God, everything began to change because what I was doing all along was studying the truth.
Okay.
And in studying the truth, I found God. And when I found God, it changed. It taught me I learned how to be a man. I learned how to be a man. Men's retreats and marriage retreats. I learned how to be a man. Instead of manhood, I learned was from Shaft, Superfly, the Mac, all of those, those were my role models back in the day. So I
Yeah.
had to have a total paradigm shift. I had to get that mess out of my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that something how we have to unlearn sometimes the
Ooh, you
things?
just said
Yeah.
it. You just said it.
Yeah. And you mentioned it with the whole piece around renewing your mind, right? Like that's what most of that has to do with, right? Exchanging our thoughts, our beliefs, our attitudes, our worldview, for another, right? So, wow. And so you and I were kind of briefly talking before we jumped on, and you were telling me about, where you grew up, and we're here in February. By the time you guys see this, we may be in March, but in February, Black History Month. Talk to us a little bit about like some of the significance, some of the things that you saw related to Black history growing up as a young boy and so forth. Some of the things that maybe really stood out to you.
Yeah, well, again, I mentioned the Albany movement. My brother just happened to be a civil rights singer, and he got pretty famous for that work because I remember my stepfather telling him, "Don't come here bringing those people here because of the danger that it would bring to the family." And I admired my brother because he could sing. He was 15 years older than me, but he was doing something that I was proud of. He even got locked up in Mississippi during a march. And I got pictures of it, and it's something that I viewed and I was very proud of because growing up as a baby boomer in the rural South, where there was Jim Crow. I was in the Jim Crow South. As a matter of fact, we didn't get voting rights until 1965. I was born almost 10 years before that. So as a little boy, I was very much aware of the social dynamics in my community, in my state. And I always felt some kind of way about it. And I always said again to myself, I'm going to do something about it. And this has been, I'm telling you, I've always known that I would do this work, but yesterday I didn't know it would be today. But it's always been a part of me because I've always felt like all men, needed a fair chance. And that's what moves me. It really moves me today. Growing up in the South, segregated, discriminated against, dealt with a lot of racism because I was one of the classes that integrated during high school in the
Okay.
70s, 72. And we went to a high school which was on the west side of town. We were bused to the west side of town. They sent the best students to the white schools that we were integrating, and they sent the worst white students to the black schools.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a strategy, Southern boy strategy. But anyway, when we got to the white schools, the Ku Klux Klan, the actual Klan, was standing on the hill.
Wow.
Yeah, with signs, go to your own schools. They didn't want us mixing with their sons and daughters, and left an impression on me. At that point, I sought to become a junior Black Panther.
Okay.
So all of this, there's a lot surrounding my thought and movement. You say OG, I started throwing bricks at the chain gang. That's what they
Okay.
used to call prisons. As a young man, every year, I noticed a lot of my homeboys would go to the juvenile detention center, and they would come back, man, with nice waves in their hair and look like they had been working out. They'd be all beefed up, skin be all pretty. And I asked one of my homeboys in particular, I said, man, what you doing, man? You look good. I've been locked up. Okay? And that became like a norm.
Oh,
So I
wow.
said, wow. So I started throwing bricks at the chain gang trying to get there. But I made straight A's in school, Antoine. I kid you not. And my teacher said, no, no, no. We're not going to lose you. You're too smart for them streets. So
Yeah.
they always kept me busy. I was always saved. God always had a ram in the bush for me. And I didn't go that route. So yeah, man. But
Wow.
part of the history,
Yeah.
the
No, that's
community,
good.
the village that I grew up in, all of that. That's why I do this work, because there's a village that first of all has to be created. They don't just happen. Villages don't just happen. They have to be created, especially the effective ones. And that's what I did for me and my children. Because my wife was an only child. She didn't even really have a family. And her dad, we had to go and find him. And I went and found him. I said, no, no, no. We built a family. We created a family.
Wow.
Built a support group around us of family and friends, because she never had much family, just friends. So I've always had plenty of family. You know, like I said, my mom married a man who had 5 children, and she had 6 and a grandchild. And we
Okay.
all moved in together, man. And I can tell you some stories, brother.
I bet you could.
You know, I can tell you some stories, especially when those children are not related, male and female. I ain't gonna even go there.
We
That's a
know where
whole
you
nother
went. Yeah.
show. That's a whole
Hey.
nother show. But yeah, so all of that on my journey in the history is what caused me
Wow.
to be who I am today, man. I'm a jewel compared to what I was.
Yeah. Wow. Praise
Yeah.
God. You
Praise
you said
God.
some.
Yes. Thank God,
Yeah.
brother.
You said something that I thought was interesting in terms of like creating a village. Nowadays, and especially for those of us in the African American community, like we understand that term, like we know what that means. But nowadays, it seems like less than ever. Do you see that sense of village? And it's almost like this sense of pride where folks are like, nah, I don't want, focus on my business, or, I don't need, so and so. I'm independent. I can do my own thing. I don't, even if there is a need, it's like, no, I don't, I don't want people taking pity on me or all this stuff. Where do you think that mentality comes from? From your perspective, having, come from that era where folks were very family oriented, even if you weren't blood related, folks treated each other like family, looked out for each other, to where we're now more siloed, and we value independence and all this stuff, and people are not as open to create a village, if you will.
Yeah, that beloved community that our brother Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mentioned. Um, I believe that for me, because I've been seeking to define community, because see, for me as an African American male, everything black ain't black. You know, you got many different dark skinned peoples, but the African American male gets the report card for all of the dark skinned people. Everything that's done by black people, Haitians, Jamaicans, Africans, we get graded by their actions. The African American male. And that's something that I believe is anyway. It's a erroneous narrative because of our journey. Because of our journey, we have to be very. Go back to what was the question that you asked me? I got lost somewhere. I
Yeah,
got
that's okay. Yeah, the question was just, what do you see as kind of like the common denominator or that thing
the
of your,
problem.
yep, yep, yep.
Yeah, that pride for one thing, and then we have to make that transition from the struggle life, because there's a struggle life, and then there's real life. There's a difference between living and struggling.
Break that down for us.
Think about it. When we had to, like my mom and my grandmom used to say, we had to make $1 out of 15 cents for so long
Sure,
that
sure, sure.
it's become our norm. That's the struggle life.
Okay.
When you don't plan for vacations, when you may not have insurance, and you get the hookup, like your cable or your insurance. But
I
anyway,
remember that.
that's struggle life. The kind
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can't rest with that. And that's what I see people are afraid of. So we do whatever we can to disguise it. What do you call it? What do the young people call it? Flexing.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of flexing going on. And that's what I see as a problem.
Okay.
Instead of being real, and see that once was a time when the church was a place of refuge, a place of resources for us. And we would go there and get the help that we needed. But now people are so siloed,
Yeah.
and they're siloed through our belief systems. Because again, like I said, we have to define community. And we have to find and create community, because all skin folk ain't kin folk. Okay? I mean, it's just, there's a lot of people that don't have the same values
That's right.
that are in the same neighborhoods.
That's
And we
right.
have to define, we have to pick through, like somebody told me, you take what you can use and throw the rest in the trash. And I do that with curriculums and all of that. It's not that it's bad. I just can't use it in my village.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But it's useful for somebody else's village, and I'm glad that I'm aware of it. But I'm going to custom make it to my village. And that's what's wrong. A lot of us don't have a village. We're just existing.
Yeah.
That's that
Yeah.
struggle life. No plans, no nothing, man. Just existing. No career mindset, a job mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, you said it. Listen, we're gonna start to wind down, but I so appreciate you spending some time with us. I wish we can go a little longer. But time is of the essence. We speaking of church, we actually have a church a family meeting, they call it, tonight. So my
Praise
wife
God.
gonna get on me, so we gotta get going soon. This is the Releasing Pressure podcast, where we understand that, like, men, regardless of, we're talking 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, like, there's a lot of pressure that men feel, and we often suffer in silence. What's one thing that you would leave our audience with, specifically our men and fathers, to begin to release some of that pressure and weight off of them?
Yes. Again, finding that community.
Yeah. Creating that community. You said
Creating that community. And that's really what it is, because you're not going to find it. In most cases, you'll have to create. But find a community where it's a safe space for you to be able to share and talk about what's going on. We have to have regular engagements to be able to talk about the stuff that's going on inside of us, because again, this society ain't necessarily suited for strong men. I mean, not from what it's been feminized to a point where I got a sister. I don't know whether to call her he or she, because, and then for me, I'm saying that I practice toxic masculinity because I'm being my authentic self. But I say And guess what? I have to get support groups. I have to go to support groups. I have to talk to my mentor about it because we all have our idiosyncrasies. So
Yeah.
I say all that to say every man needs, we have what is called Boy Man Father Plus talks every fourth Thursday for
I
1 hour.
like that. I like
Where
that.
men just come together and talk about whatever's on their heart and mind that as it relates to their community where they live, because it's based on the premise. The question is, how are the children where you live in your village?
I love that. How would the
And
children?
then we go from there.
You can go from there. Listen, blessings to you. Wishing you guys the best in your work out there in Atlanta. For those of you who have joined us today, we appreciate you. I ask that you like, subscribe, and comment. If something of some jewel that was spoken today stood out to you. And so until next time, peace out. Appreciate you guys.